Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. And with that said, let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day is that Notre Dame is on the verge of naming its next head football coach. Now, the reason that it is not technically official yet, Notre Dame has a very strict vetting policy. It comes from, for those college football historians that may remember, there was once a man named George O'Leary. He was named the Notre Dame head football coach. He lied on his resume. He was fired like a day and a half later. And so now Notre Dame's vetting policy is much more difficult than it has been in the past. But Marcus Freeman, their current defensive coordinator, for all intents and purposes, when it is all said and done, will be named the next head coach of Notre Dame football. Before I get into all of the specifics, what I would just say is this is a perfect example of something that I do talk about sometimes on this show. I've said it many times. I love this show. I love what I do. And when I turn on this mic, one thing that I do like and prefer is to come in with a big, strong, bold opinion. Lincoln Riley is going to win national championships at USC. This guy's not the right hire. This team's going to beat that team. But this is one of those deals where I actually see both sides. For the people who say he's too young, first-time head coach, I don't know that this is right for Notre Dame. I totally get it. On the flip side, I also think there's a very compelling argument the other way, which is that given the circumstances, this is the right decision at this time for Notre Dame. And that is where I actually lean. And so let's get into it. Let's discuss. Let's explain. And really where it starts is the timing of everything. And I know that everybody wants to crush Brian Kelly, and it's all Brian Kelly's fault, and screw Brian Kelly. Well, first of all, let's never forget Brian Kelly bailed on Cincinnati right before the biggest bowl game of their program history at that moment in time to come to Notre Dame from Cincinnati back in 2009. And I get why Brian Kelly made the decision that he did. This is 2021. We have this early signing period in December, and Brian Kelly, as soon as he knows he is going to be the LSU head coach, he has to commit to being the LSU head coach. And that starts with recruiting, and that starts with wrapping up their signing class starting in the next few weeks in December. And so while it really sucks for Notre Dame, and while I hate it, and while I understand they're still in the playoff hunt mathematically, and frankly probably have a pretty straightforward path to getting in, I also understand why Brian Kelly had to make the decision that he made. I also understand why Notre Dame was put in a very difficult position by Brian Kelly, right? What we have to understand about this Notre Dame thing is we all want Notre Dame to make that perfect hire, to have that to have that Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly type moment that USC and LSU had, but it was never going to be realistic because LSU had 2 months to figure out who was going to be their next head coach. USC had 3 months to figure out who was going to be their next head coach. Notre Dame had like 40 minutes notice before it became official. And even as Jack Swarbrick, the AD, said in his press conference, I believe it was Tuesday morning, he had kind of the hint, the idea that Brian Kelly was interested in leaving for another school. But until it happens, it's not like Jack Swarbrick is making phone calls, engaging interest when he has a coach of an 11-1 team. And so this was almost an impossible situation. It becomes official Monday night, and all of a sudden, Notre Dame is in scramble mode. And that's not a knock on Notre Dame. That's not a criticism of Notre Dame. That's just a reality. And so the way that I see it, if you believe that they should have done more than just promote their defensive coordinator, which I actually disagree with you. I think Marcus Freeman is the right hire, but let me explain. Really, I believe once Brian Kelly makes it official, once he sends out that text, I'm going to LSU, Notre Dame is really they have 3 choices that they can make, and none of them are really ideal. First off, I think there's one legitimate A-plus home run, unite the fan base hire. That is Luke Fickell. As I talked about on Wednesday's show, Luke Fickell is also coaching for something much bigger than any one job or anything. He is coaching to become the first Group of 5 team in the playoff, and he is coaching ultimately for a national championship. And so, yes, you can wait for Luke Fickell. But as I said the other day, you're going to have to wait until January 1st just to talk to Luke Fickell, even if you know that he may be interested. I don't think he's going to show any signs that he's interested because he is a very straightforward, focused on what's in the present kind of guy. So you would have to wait until January 1st, the day after the first round of the playoffs, just to even speak to him, hoping that he is going to take your head coaching job, and then you have already missed the early signing period, and you're at that point, your entire recruiting class probably fractures. It's hard to keep the number 4 recruiting class in the country together without a head coach. And so unless you feel 1,000% certain that you're getting Luke Fickell, I don't really know if that's a realistic option in 2021 in college football, again, because of the early signing period that is on December 15th. The second option, you can go out and get a new head coach from somewhere else. Obviously, outside of Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell, of course, is from somewhere else. With that said, though, that brings up a couple interesting predicaments in its own right. You could probably go get somebody good. But again, the really, really good coaches, Luke Fickell's coaching for a playoff. If there's some NFL coach that wants the head coaching job, he's not going to be available. And so very likely, if you bring in someone from the outside, say Matt Campbell, say Pat Fitzgerald, it's not going to be a grand slam home run hire with the fan base. The fan base will be divided. And then more importantly, you know who else is going to be divided? Is the locker room. And I'm not saying that the players should have the ultimate say in who becomes the next head coach. But this is a really good team and a really good program that is trending by all accounts in the right direction. Jack Swarbrick, the AD, said it in his press conference the other day. He said, the last time we had to make a hire, I was here to hire Brian Kelly. And the number one priority, the number one bullet point on my list was to get a program builder, a guy that has had success building programs. And we don't need that anymore. We need somebody that can take this great program that Brian Kelly has built and take it to the next level. And so maybe Matt Campbell's that guy. Maybe Pat Fitzgerald's that guy. Maybe PJ Fleck's that guy, whoever. But you are now asking somebody to come in that doesn't know the players, doesn't know the team, doesn't know the school, doesn't know academics, doesn't know admissions, doesn't know anything, and try to elevate something that is already at about as high as it's been in about 30 or 35 years. Or the third option, you can hire Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator, who everybody in the building likes, who everybody in the building respects, who is basically the backbone of this top 5 recruiting class that's coming in, who all the coaching staff likes, who all the coaching staff respects, and you can basically keep things status quo. Marcus Freeman focuses on the defense. Just about everybody else kind of stays in the same spot that they're currently in. Tommy Rees, of course, has been the offensive coordinator, the play caller for the last few years. He stays. The strength and conditioning staff stays. That's what you can do. And so to me, as sexy as it would be, listen, I would love another incredible hire that would leave ripple effects across college football the way that Lincoln Riley going to USC did or the way that Brian Kelly going to LSU did. I would love for them to go get fill-in-the-blank coach, Ryan Day. I don't know. Ryan Day is not leaving Ohio State for Notre Dame, but you get the point. I would love for them to go out and get that next head coach that creates these crazy ripple effects in college football, but that's not realistic. So unless you are 100% positive that Luke Fickell is absolutely 100% going to say yes, I truly believe it's the best option. I truly believe it's the best option for a couple reasons. The first one I just discussed. One, this guy is universally liked in the building, in football, well-respected across the board. I know he's young. I know he's new to the community. He's only been there 1 year. But everybody, by all accounts, seems to like him. The administration likes him. The players like him. The other assistant coaches like him. They respect him. He has a voice in that building. Again, by all accounts, he is much more personable. He's kind of the one-on-one relationships guy where Brian Kelly was the distant CEO type. In 2021, in college football, I do think that matters. I do think having relationships with the players matter. I do think this isn't 1974 where you can just stand in your ivory tower, metaphorically or literally, Bear Bryant coach from a tower and practice. You have to be there. You have to be on the ground. You have to listen to your players. You have to communicate with them. You have to respect them. And Marcus Freeman does that. Beyond that, and I think this is really the most important part, is that it keeps everything together. I don't think people realize, and I say this all the time, where Notre Dame is at right now. I know we think of Notre Dame as Rudy and the Gold Dome and play like a champion today, and we think it's 1945 and they should win the national championship every year. That's how people treat Notre Dame. I'm not even saying Notre Dame fans are like that, but people are like, oh my God, Notre Dame went 11-1? They're so overrated. No. Notre Dame is in about as good of a position as it has been in 30 or 40 years. And I will say, listen, you can criticize Brian Kelly. It is a direct reflection of Brian Kelly. And so the idea that you want to bring in somebody else and completely tear down what Brian Kelly has spent the last 12 years building, I don't think that makes sense. Just think about it at the most basic level. This is an 11-1 team that could make the college football playoff. This is an 11-1 team that was actually built for next year. This was supposed to be the rebuilding year, and 2022 was supposed to be the year where they return everybody and compete for a national championship. So now you're going to let Marcus Freeman – you don't hire Marcus Freeman right now. Listen, this guy's got options. He can go to LSU and be the highest paid defensive coordinator in college football. He can go somewhere else and be a defensive coordinator and make multi-millions of dollars a year. He could go probably get head coaching opportunities at plenty of other places. So you start waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 days, this guy's got options. Tommy Rees has options. The entire coaching staff has options. And so that to me is part of this as well. You get to keep this thing together. You get to keep building. You get to take, how about this? You get to take an 11-1 team as the floor and the baseline of where the program is and where the program could be going. Just think about that. Imagine how many coaches would love to start in the position that Marcus Freeman was in. So why are you going to bring in somebody else that's just going to tear it down and do this his way, that his way, his own strength and condition? No, this isn't USC. Okay, I watch a lot of college football. USC was a disaster. USC needed to completely start from scratch. LSU was not good this year. They needed to make a lot of changes. Notre Dame doesn't really need to do all that much except keep building on what they're doing. Speaking of which, you know what else keeping Marcus Freeman does? It helps keep that recruiting class in place. Now, I don't know if they'll sign everybody because flips happen all the time. They happen they happen in Alabama. They happen at Georgia. And so, if Notre Dame has 25 guys committed, do I believe all 25 will sign on signing day? I don't know. But I do know that Marcus Freeman is the guy on the ground, the guy that has been put in the legwork with this recruiting class, the guy that has been the backbone of building this recruiting class. And I think by naming him head coach, it allows you to keep this recruiting class, which is absolutely incredible. I said it the other day. Notre Dame has the number 4 ranked recruiting class in the country, okay? That is insane. Yeah, I know, Notre Dame, Golden Dome, they should win they're always overrated. Notre Dame, according to the experts, has the number 4 ranked recruiting class in the country. The only 3 teams that are currently ranked ahead of them, Georgia, Alabama, and Texas A&M. Those are the only 3 teams. Ohio State is not ahead of Notre Dame right now. Clemson is not ahead of Notre Dame right now. USC, Texas, Oklahoma, Florida State, Michigan, Penn State, none of those teams are ranked ahead of Notre Dame right now. And so by keeping Marcus Freeman, you keep one of the best recruiting classes in the country intact. And again, it goes back to what I just said a minute ago. That is part of building this thing up for the future. The final thing I would say, the reason I have no fundamental problem with this is because the plan was to give this program to Marcus Freeman all along. For people who do not know, Brian Kelly basically let it loose at a press conference by accident about late August, early September, where he's asked about something. And he kind of mentions I got this young defensive coordinator. He's going to be the next head coach at Notre Dame. And a lot of people took it are you retiring? Well, what's going on here? And the point is that nothing was guaranteed, and we would have to see and wait and see and all that stuff. But at the same time, the expectation was that at some point when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame, and we all assumed it would be via retirement in the next 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, that the program was going to be handed over to Marcus Freeman. And so, yes, in a perfect world, you would love for Marcus Freeman to have more time to just be on the job, right? He's 35 years old. That's a lot of pressure to take over as the head coach at Notre Dame. But if you believed that he was going to be the right coach at some point, well, some point is now. And so, again, I've said it 10 times. I'm not going to repeat it. It's better to bring in Marcus Freeman, keep what is going, keep the success, rather than go get a Matt Campbell or get a Pat Fitzgerald or get somebody like that. Now, look, if there's some mystery candidate that absolutely would have killed for this job that you shouldn't have turned down, I don't know. Is there a chance that you could have waited until Sunday to see if Luke Fickell loses to Houston and is out of the playoff picture? I don't know. But what I am just saying is this was the right move at this time for Notre Dame to keep a great program intact. Just about the only thing I would say, I do understand those that say, again, what I said a minute ago. He's too young. He's not ready. This is a different kind of job. And I get it. But you know what else? I would have said the same thing if I had a podcast when Lincoln Riley was named head coach at 33, 34 years old of the Oklahoma Sooners. I didn't think he was ready. Offensive coordinator. What? How about Ohio State? I remember when Ryan Day took over for Urban Meyer. I remember doing radio interviews, people saying, well, what do you expect? And I remember that was a year that Michigan on paper was really good. And I said, this has to be the year for Michigan. First-year head coach, Ryan Day. And then you see Justin Fields at quarterback the first game of the season. If I remember correctly, he threw for 3 touchdowns. I think he had 4 total touchdowns in the first quarter of the first game as the Ohio State quarterback. And he said, oh, okay, this Ryan Day guy is going to be good. And so I don't know if Marcus Freeman is going to be Ryan Day or Lincoln Riley, 2 coaches that have multiple playoff appearances. I don't know what it is going to be. But if you had asked most people when Ryan Day was named head coach to take over for Urban Meyer, you said, I don't know, he's a little young. Lincoln Riley, I don't know, he's a little young. So with that said, let's give him a shot. And I think he can be really good, and I am really excited to see what Notre Dame looks like. But to me, this was the right decision given the circumstances at Notre Dame. There's no guarantee, but you know what there would have been a much better guarantee of? If you wait and you vet candidates and you wait 2, 3, 4 weeks, you're going to lose that entire recruiting class. You're potentially going to lose players into the transfer portal, and I just don't think it's the right decision. Now the program can get back on track. The coaches can stay recruiting. They can stay on the road talking to all their commitments. More importantly, the players can get ready in case they happen to have a playoff game to get ready for. Playoff? Jim Mora, new UConn head coach. Playoff? They can get ready now. They can focus on the game. They can focus on the team. They can focus on academics. They can focus on finals, all these great things. So I have no fundamental issue with it. I don't know if he's the perfect fit, but it is about as good of a decision as you can make, in my opinion, if you're Notre Dame, as possible. So what I want to take a quick break. I want to come back. I want to preview the weekend ahead in college football. Not sure if you heard a couple big games. We'll hit on all of them. I will be right back. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. Also, make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram.